Hi, this will be the third video showing a sequence limit by epsilon definition, and this will be a bit harder one. I tried to write a hard question, and I already explained the intuition behind this epsilon limit, epsilon definition, so you can go check the previous videos. So let's get to the solution. So first I always say let epsilon be greater than 0. Okay, this epsilon is given, and I will try to find an n, which is a function of epsilon, okay, for each epsilon. So I'm writing an minus l, which is n squared plus 3n over n squared minus 2n minus 6. And minus 1, an minus l, so this is equal to n squared plus 3n minus n squared, minus n squared plus 2n plus 6 over n squared minus 2n minus 6. Okay, so now I'm just simplifying. I'm saying these ones cancel out, 5n plus 6 over this thing, minus 2n minus 6. So I will try to kind of simplify all of the numbers, okay, except n stuff. So for this part, I can say this is less than 5n plus 10, because then I will be able to get it into 5 parentheses, and I will have the n kind of bit simpler. Okay, it will be 5 times n plus 2. And for the lower part, it's not so easy. So I can write it like, it kind of looks like n minus 1 squared, and it will be plus 1, so minus 7. Okay, and now, so I'm just writing the top part, 5n plus 2 over n minus 1 squared minus 7. So this is the tricky part, and this is more up to your imagination, because you can just think of something else. Okay, so if I could, so I can make the top part bigger to make the number smaller, or the lower part uh, smaller. Okay, I can increase this part, decrease this part. So like on this part, I'm thinking like, for example, n minus 1 squared minus 7, would this be less than n, let's say n minus 2 squared? Okay, because if it was so, we would have something much more simpler. Okay, sorry, I'm trying to see that if this is bigger. Okay, because if this is bigger, when I take reciprocals, it will be smaller, and it will be what I want. So let's open both sides. Okay, so I have n squared minus 2n minus 6. Well, this is my part from the question. And is this greater than n squared minus 4n plus 4? So if I get rid of n squares, I will have 2n greater than 10. So this will be true if n is greater than 5. Okay, so for here I will say n is greater than 5. Okay, so everything I do from this point will be true if n is greater than 5, and in the end I will take this into the calculations. Okay, I will think about this thing in the end. So I said 5 and plus 2. I also have well, absolute values here, so I said 5m plus 2 over, so I said this is greater than n minus 2 squared, so it will be less than 1 over n minus 2 squared. Now everything is positive, because I said this is positive, so I can just write it without absolute value. And now I can just factor the lower part, 5n plus 2. This will be n minus 2 n minus 2. Well, this is not so important. So, well, so now I'm trying to do further simplifications. So if I say n plus 2 over n minus 2 is not less than 1, so I can just write that, but it will probably be less than 1 over half, because let's see, I'm using now another inequality. I'm trying to like make my life easier, okay? So I'm trying to see, would this be true if I say n plus 2 over n minus 2 be less than 1? Well, it won't, but let's say, is it less than 1 over 2? Because then I will have 2n. Sorry, well, it can't really be less than something smaller than 1. So I can say, is this less than, for example, 2? Because then what will I have? N plus 2 is less than 2n minus 4. So, sorry. So I will have n on this side is greater than 6. Okay. So, well, this is again like not the best. Sorry. So if n is greater than 6, okay, I found that this thing will be less than 2. So I can take this part and say this is less than 2. Okay, so it will be 5 times 2 over n minus 2. Now I have something much simpler, okay? I could try to solve it from this point, and I would try to do the same thing now I'm gonna do. So I'm just writing this thing. Let's say here, this is 10 over n minus 2. So now I can say this is less than, so I know that n is greater or equal than this n, so n minus 2 will be greater or equal than that, and 1 over reciprocal of that will be less than this capital N, okay? So this is standard part, and now I say this is less than epsilon. So now I'm just trying to solve this. I say n minus 2, I'm looking at this part, n minus 2 is greater than 10 over n, 10 over epsilon. So I have n is greater than 10 over epsilon plus 2, and usually we would say let n be equal to 10 over epsilon. Let's take floor function of this, okay, and plus 2. So if we do that, well, this may be true, and so what we can think about this thing is that 10 over epsilon will be, of course, this will be positive because epsilon is positive. So this thing can at least be 0, okay? Because if it's like 0.1, let's say epsilon is 20, okay? So this thing will be 1 over 2, and it will round down to 0. And my n will be equal to 2, but I know that my n should be greater than 6, okay? And n is greater or equal than this capital N. So I want this n to be less than 6, okay? So what I can do is just take this 2, okay? And if I make this into 7, okay? If I take this 2 and make this 7, or I can make it 6, or no, let's keep it 7. And now I know that this thing is greater than 0. Actually, it's greater or equal than 0. And I know that this thing is greater than 6. So now I have that this n, no matter how I pick this n, this will be greater than 6, and everything will be satisfied because I know n is greater or equal than this capital N, which is greater than 6, and all of my conditions were up to this condition that n was greater than 6, so everything will be satisfied if I have n being equal to, I'm just writing it more clearly, 10 over epsilon at floor function, and if I add 7 to it, everything will be satisfied.